Hello, Navigator Nation. Long time no see. How's everybody doing? My name is Mike Hess. I am the COPD dude. I am the administrator of the COPD Navigator discussion group here on Facebook, and the administrator of the, COPD channel on YouTube. Back behind me is my lovely wife Kelly, who many of you have come to know through a lot of our house call shows. Fantastic production assistant there. Thank you very much.
Happy Friday.
It is indeed a happy Friday. It's good to be back here live. Kelly and I have been doing a weekly live show over on our Best Nest channel, but this is, of course, the place that started it all. So it's nice to come back and be able to do some weekday fun. As you may recall, or if you're new around here, you won't recall, but during when we had a lockdown, stay-at-home, quarantine, whatever we wanted to call it here in Michigan, we did a live show every day. Historically, we've been doing about every other week or so. Excuse me. It's taken a little time to readapt to where the new phase is going to be and all that kind of stuff. John Linnell, thanks for joining in. John asks, the piano player go on strike? I don't think so. It should have been coming through the audio, all that stuff. Hadn't made any changes on that, but as I said, excuse me, I said to Emma, the delight over on the left side here, just out of frame. I kind of forgot how to do a lot of this stuff. I've gotten kind of I got kind of, it's like, not like riding a bike, but it's a skill. I mean, you do a thing, you kind of work in, and then when you get out of that routine, you kind of forget about it somewhat. Like playing tennis. There you go. That's a better one. So, forgot to start the watch party on a different computer and just doing all the other stuff that often needs to happen. But we're here. We're live. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm assuming you can hear me. Hi, Jeannie, checking in. Welcome. Our people definitely checking in. Haven't said anything yet, but Angie and Brian showing up in the watch party here. Brian, of course, one of our big patrons on patreon.com/bestnest. On the bright side, volume is wonderful. Well, so sometimes I get to figure some stuff out. Volume is good. Color balance probably a little bit off. I don't think it was, well, I guess it was kind of sunny when we were doing a lot of these things before, but it just seems like the camera is a little bit off here. But it is what it is. So what we're going to do today for Fitness Friday, we've got a couple of things working right now. Of course, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, especially we're seeing nationally, we're seeing record numbers of new cases every day, particularly in the hot spots like Florida and Arizona and Texas. I saw some headlines that were seeing that even in New York, that has really done one of our first hot spots, that has gotten a little bit better. But now they're starting to see some signs of growth again. In Michigan, we're starting to see some signs of growth. Our 7-day rolling averages are up again.
Sorry.
So we're definitely not out of the woods yet. On top of that, a couple of months ago when all this was first starting, we were talking about allergies and, it was allergy season and everything was flaring up there. Now it has most decidedly become summer. It is hot. It is humid. It's supposed to be 90 degrees all weekend here in the city of Kalamazoo, or the greater Kalamazoo metropolitan area, I suppose. I don't know exactly what the sign was for where they were defining it. Hot, humid, pandemic. We can't go outside. We can't go to the gym. We can't go to pulmonary rehab in a lot of places still. We're still having all of these issues. Plus, there are still allergens. There are still a lot of these things going on. Plus, there's stress. There's all these activities all these factors that are kind of interfering with what we would want to do for exercise. So, looking at how other places are doing it, I really like to try to draw in the best practices from all over the place. As I say, and I'm trying to get into the bright light here, try to give myself a little halo. Good, what's the phrase? Good artists create, great artists steal, something along those lines. There's a cliche like that goes in those regards. And I follow a couple of excellent physiotherapists and physicians from the United Kingdom. And one of them has been really looking into how we can adapt a lot of our existing pulmonary rehab infrastructure to the virtual world. And I know there are a lot of folks doing that here in the States as well. David Junga from out east is doing it. It seems to be particularly out in the East Coast kind of a deal, because they're a great organization. He actually has a website, pulmonaryrehab.com, his facility. Jumped on that right away. Home Rehabilitation Network, Lift, Pulmonary Rehab, a couple of groups that I've worked with before doing some really interesting stuff with, I don't want to call it virtual reality, but remote reality perhaps, where we're doing these things now via web conferences like we do in our Zoom conferences in the Ready Room, but doing these activities where I can, in theory, I can be monitoring you, or the clinician can be monitoring the person doing exercise. You can still have some of that social construct where you have, people are talking to each other. You still have a lot of the features of pulmonary rehab, but you don't have the logistical problems. You don't have the fact that you have to, pack up your oxygen tanks. You don't have to schedule a ride or find somebody to give you a ride, or things like that. A lot of the traditional barriers for people accessing pulmonary rehabilitation. And one of the things that, welcome in, Linda. Happy 4th weekend. Happy 4th weekend to you too. That was another thing I wanted to throw out there. This weekend in particular, this past week, and I'm sure going into this weekend, lots of fireworks around. And so if you live in a neighborhood where everybody's doing fireworks, the smoke from the fireworks and from bonfires and campfires and all that kind of stuff, that often gets overlooked as an issue that causes breathing problems. You can be out there, whiz bang and, enjoying the fireworks, and then all of a sudden you can't breathe because you've gotten a whiff of the smoke that nobody ever really thinks about. So all of these things together, we've got to start coming up with some new ways to do some fun activities inside. Now, inside can be kind of boring, when we're all stuck at home, particularly, if you're stuck at home all the time, like if you have a chronic condition that prevents you from going out a lot, or as those of us who don't necessarily have that have learned during the lockdown, it can get kind of cramped inside. I mean, even when you live with people you really like and enjoy spending time with, sometimes you want to see a different set of walls, or at least a different environment. So one of the ideas that I can't remember if it was Dr. Bevan Smith or Dr. Greenhall, I can't remember exactly who it was. I could go back and look. I should go back and look probably. But what they've done is, for some of their walking, they have created an environment for it. And what I mean by that is I've seen this idea at when we used to be able to go to the gym, when we get on the treadmill. The treadmill has a built-in TV screen, basically, and it puts up scenery. Roger, happy 4th to you. Sorry, I'm trying to follow all the screens here, trying to get back into build that habit back up again. Want to make sure I say hello to everybody who stops by. So it's the same kind of idea where you're doing the exercise and you can kind of pretend to be in a different space, so that it's not just plodding along on the treadmill and doing your thing and getting bored and all that kind of stuff. So what I wanted to do is go out and look for some environments, some things that were kind of nice, where you can kind of at least pretend that you are walking somewhere more productive than in your living room. So I thought this would be a good place to give that a shot. We've done a lot of experimental things on here. Sometimes they have worked out, sometimes not. So this would be a great chance to experiment a little bit and for you to give me some feedback. So what I found is I'm going to see if I can switch over here and see what needs to be done with. Okay, so I got to go over to back into the YouTubes. And this is Wailea Beach Path in Maui. This is what has been done here is this person. And again, this is not my work. This is Strings and Wings. This is a 3-mile walk from a hotel to a Fairmont hotel and then a return. So we're not going to do the entire 3-mile walk. We're going to do about a mile or so because it does go a little bit fast at times. But there are also a whole bunch of other things to do. You can see over on the right hand side of the screen here. I'm assuming that looks like we're still lagging a little bit here. All right, so you should be able to see on the right hand side of the screen, there's already a list of suggestions of other walks you can do. And on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/COPD Navigator, or just search for COPD Navigator and look for the lighthouse. I actually found another playlist, another physiotherapist from England. Again, they've got their act together for the most part over there. Has a whole series of walking through the English countryside that is paced a little bit more slowly, but I just kind of felt like a beach day today. You know, it's England, so there's a lot of rain in his videos, and some of them are, that's kind of the point to it, is walking through the rain and just hearing the rain and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to go a little bit different angle. I wanted to walk to the beach. Haven't been to the beach really yet this year. Hoping to go in a couple of weeks still when we go on vacation, and hoping to do a little swimming so I can keep up with Russell Winwood and his Australian Lung Foundation fundraising event. So without further ado, let's see if we can get this thing going here. Is it not showing up? Did I not double click it? I didn't double click it. That's why everybody's probably looking at me like, what are you talking about? There we go. Now on the right hand side of the screen, you can see where there's other videos and things like that. And again, this is just a YouTube channel that was done just to go for a walk. Same kind of concept. In the comments here, it actually says, I'm going to use this on my treadmill in the wintertime. So let's see, we'll make this full screen, and that should full screen out for the most part on the feed there. And let's get going. Wailea Beach Path. So all you have to do for this is you're still just kind of walking in place. We're going to move the microphone here a little bit so that I'm still very happy to answer questions while we're on the walk, because again, this is supposed to be a social function. So you can see averaging about 4 miles an hour is the plan for this walk. Now, I'm doing this okay. This is a pretty good pace for me when I'm walking in place. I have taken to, because I'm trying to improve my own physical fitness these days, I have been trying to get my 10,000 and now up to 11,000 steps every day. And when I'm doing that in place, like I'll take some time in my office when I have a minute, and I will do a few minutes of walking in place. When I'm walking in place, I can do 4 miles an hour. When I'm walking in the neighborhood on the sidewalk, I've noticed that I have slowed down a little bit. I usually do 4 miles an hour usually works out to about a 15-minute mile. When I'm walking in real life, according to my watch, I'm usually doing about a 20-minute mile right now. 18 to 20. Kelly points out 18 to 20, depending on how hot it is, depending on which path I go. We have some elevation changes, so it's good to get a little bit of extra structure here. But, like I said, this is just somebody out for a walk, and you can kind of pretend you're watching if you watch the screen, or if you have a phone or something like that. It's a little bit awkward to hold it up in front of you or something like that, but you can at least you can even put this up on your TV. If you have a smart TV, or if you have a device like a Amazon Fire Stick or a Google, what's the Google thing? The Chromecast, or a Roku, or anything like that. Anything that gets you to YouTube, you can get one of these videos. So if you have maybe a big TV and you want to walk in your living room, you just kind of get close to your TV, and it's like walking, looking at the big window here. You can kind of see the ocean off to the side. And I've never been to Hawaii myself. I keep hoping for that invitation. I keep hoping that Val Chang out there needs me for something and can get me out there for some fundraising. Who we got here? We've got Lynn checking in. Welcome. Happy afternoon, Lynn. We're just going for a walk. We're walking down Wailea Beach path in Hawaii. that somebody went to and was able to use one of their camera devices to film the footage so that we can all kind of walk together. And again, you don't have to walk at the 4-mile-an-hour pace. You go at your speed. And of course, you should be checking with your clinician and all that, the usual disclaimers and things like that. Making sure that you're talking to your clinical team to make sure you're on an exercise plan that works best for you. But, I'm trying to keep up to roughly where this person was walking. And we're going to take a little left there. The sunlight. Little J.J. Abrams lens flare. Oh, look at that. Look at the palm trees. This just makes you... It really does make you feel like you're on vacation a little bit. The waves coming in. Oh, lovely stuff. Who has been to Hawaii? I want to hear some Hawaii stories. Like I said, I've never been there myself. Got out to California a couple of times, but never made it any farther than that. It's a little bit reminiscent of California, actually, although the beach is a lot nicer. Could be because, let's see, when I've been to California, when I went to beachfront California, it was in February, so not much beach action there.
I went to San Diego in April.
Yeah, and so and that was kind of urbanized. So San Diego in April was really nice. Loved San Diego. That was a great great vibe there. Yeah, no, it's just not a real beachy time of year, even in SoCal.
Hi, Tito.
And Potato the cat, the namesake of the Potato Cast podcast, America's #1 healthcare podcast named after a cat.
Was the namesake of? Oh no, wait. Never mind.
Namesake is who it's named after.
Yep.
So.
I know things. Animal Crossing, please just give me oranges.
So, what's on your mind, folks? So let's, while we're walking here, I know, we can talk about, I posted a couple of news articles. We're actually starting to get some COPD news now, coming out of research projects and things like that. And, one study that came out, and this one is interesting for a couple of reasons. I posted this on our Navigator Facebook page. Didn't really go into a lot of detail about all of why I found it interesting. But a new study came out that said a triple therapy with the inhaled steroid and two bronchodilators delivered via a metered dose inhaler, which is a formulation that's approved currently in Japan called Breeze Tree, I believe. Breeze Try. Triple, whatever, did definitely show benefit in the reduction of exacerbations over the course of a year. Now, I find there's a couple of things that I find interesting about that. First of all, like I said, we've had Trelegy Ellipta on the market for a while now, and that's a pretty good med. It's once a day. It's got all three things in it, if that's appropriate for your care. Works pretty well. Also, I believe, has been demonstrated to reduce exacerbations. But this new formulation is available in a metered dose inhaler. So that's nice if you are struggling with bringing in the air, generating enough peak inspiratory flow to draw that powder out. So that's a good thing. But the other thing that I'm finding interesting about this, and this goes back to, I was at a meeting just about a year ago, talking with a pulmonologist from University of Michigan. And he was talking about how it's been accepted for several years now that we, as a rule, need to avoid inhaled corticosteroids in folks with COPD. We know that in the asthma community, steroids are kind of a frontline intervention. It's a big deal. There's a lot of inflammation, all that stuff. But in COPD, we tend to have a little bit higher risk of pneumonia. However, some of these newer research projects that are coming out, they're looking at, is it an effect of steroids in general, or is it an effect of what has up until recently been the most commonly used inhaled steroid, fluticasone. This Breeze Tree, fluticasone, yeah. Most steroids end either in "-one" or "-ide". Fun fact. The more you know. Breeze Tree, and if I'm not mistaken, Trilogy. I'd have to look this up, and I don't want to. I can't break my groove, right? Use budesonide, which is a little bit newer inhaled steroid, and some of the research out there hasn't really shown that that is associated with more pneumonia. So there's a real debate right now, and it should be interesting to see how this evolves in the next couple of years. Do we need to avoid all inhaled steroids in COPD, or do we just need to avoid fluticasone? So be on the lookout for some of that information. It'll really be interesting to see that. The other news that we're looking at was another trial came out that said if you have a low vitamin D level, you are at higher risk for exacerbations and higher risk for lower lung function. And we've kind of known that for a little while. We've known that there's been an association, at least with lower lung function and low vitamin D, but they're still working on figuring out exactly what that means. Now, there's a pretty good discussion about, you really, before you start taking vitamin D supplements, you should probably get tested for vitamin D levels. And I do agree with that wholeheartedly. Because as I think it was John was saying, if you are not low and you're taking vitamin D, then all you're doing is basically creating expensive urine because you're buying a pill. It's just going to get, if you have too much, it usually gets excreted anyway. So you should get tested. However, I can't say most because it was about 40%. A high percentage of people are low in vitamin D and might not know it. 40% of the population has low vitamin D levels. And a lot of people, it's not necessarily something you think about, and it's not necessarily something that is immediately tested for or anything like that as part of routine labs. Might be, which Kelly had come back out here because she could probably tell me a little bit more about that. But especially, our one of our key mechanisms of vitamin D production is sunlight, being exposed to sunlight. But if you're inside a lot, if you live in northern latitudes where days tend to be shorter for more of the year, if you have lower exposure to that sunlight, then you're going to create less vitamin D, and it needs to come from somewhere. Now, a lot of it is also going to depend on your diet. Foods, fatty fish like salmon and tuna. So if you're a big sushi fan, then you might be able to, your vitamin D levels might be coming up a little bit better. Dairy products, cheeses, certain vegetables that you can get vitamin D from there. But again, if you are doing these things and not having enough vitamin D, if you're still feeling maybe a little tired or things like that, get yourself checked out. Or if you're not responding to therapy like you would want to do, talk to your provider about getting a vitamin D level check. So that you can see if you do need a supplement, if you need to change your diet, if you need to go out and sit in the sun for a little bit longer, so on and so forth. All right, so let's check in where we're at here. We've been walking for, let's see. Oh, it hasn't picked up yet on my, not swinging my arms enough, I guess. Well, let's see. How long have we been walking here?
Well, it's 4:28.
We're 10 minutes into the movie, so okay, we're gonna go. We'll go another 5 or 10 minutes or so. We'll see how things are going. See if we get any more questions rolling through. Because again, this is a great time for questions. It's the first time we've been live in about a month. I think I was looking back at the calendar. I think it's been 28 days, so it's been just about exactly 4 weeks. The last show we did was a Fitness Friday. What do we do on that one? Did we do another walk, or? That might have been the last one we did, was another walk, but we didn't have the beautiful scenery that time.
Is that the Ring Fit one?
Might have been Ring Fit. Anyway. So Emma's very excited. She got herself a new video game today and is exploring the world of Animal Crossing again. So
I've restarted my island like 12 times.
Because you don't, just not a big fan of your mix of...
Well, I'm trying to get oranges, and the game is like it wants me to have cherries for whatever reason, and also just keeps giving me not great looking villagers.
Oranges are good for vitamin C. Cherries probably have something, but I can't remember what their stereotypical nutritional benefit is. Fiber, I know that. If you're having trouble going, grab yourself some fresh cherries from your farmer's market wearing a mask, and that should take care of that.
Well, I'm gonna.
Speaking of, are we gonna go to the farmer's market tomorrow? I can't really think of anything we need this time around.
Well, I was gonna go to my mom's
Tomorrow?
today.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, if you and Kelly want to go to the farmer's market, I'm gonna get behind you real quick.
All right. Everybody say hello to Emma.
Hello. I'm gonna plug in my game.
All right. So maybe I'm not walking fast, or maybe I wasn't swinging my arms enough, but sometimes my my gadget here can be a little bit finicky about the steps and all that stuff, because I should be, yeah, holding my arm like this is not really working. So I guess I'm not. So, but it also goes to show you can't always depend on your technology, and you still need to focus on how you feel and how, listen to your body and all that kind of stuff. We can also say hello to Jean-Luc.
He was snoozing.
All right. Catching up on some slower folks here. But again, look at that beach. I definitely need to make it to Hawaii at some point. Gorgeous beach. And then there's faster people too. So let's see. I think we've done about 15 minutes or so. So that's going to be about a mile. Yeah, that's 15 minutes right there. So that's about a mile. Let's take a look real quick at. As I mentioned, we've got some other options in the if we go to our COPD Navigator channel. Hey, there we are right there, live, walking the beach. So if we go to our COPD Navigator Facebook channel here, we can go down to our playlist somewhere. I might have gone past it a little bit. Oh, I got to hit on playlist. There we go. And we'll go past the created ones and their saved ones, including one my kids made me a couple of years ago for my birthday. So this is a gentleman by the name of Chris PT. Like I said, a physiotherapist, I believe, does a lot of walking. Here's one that is still by the ocean. This is in Devon, England. Maybe. There we go. And certainly we're going to get some kind of advertising here. We always do. So this is a physiotherapist from England who goes through walks on the English countryside. This one is, I believe, paced a little bit more slowly. Not that it really matters all that much. I mean, it's not like you have to try to keep up, but this is hiking a cliff-top coastal trail for 20 minutes and then wandering around the pebbles and sand of a beach for the last 10 minutes. So this is about a half-hour walk where, again, you can just kind of get some additional scenery, look at something other than the walls for a little while you're getting exercise, because we know, based on the accumulated data from these fitness trackers and all that kind of stuff, we know that activity has dropped off a cliff since the beginning of this pandemic for a lot of reasons. I mean, like I said, a lot of times our habitual things are not available. Our pulmonary rehab programs, our gyms, our tennis courts, a lot of these things just aren't open right now. We'll go back to the regular screen here. And because they're not open, it makes it a lot more difficult for us to get the kinds of activities that we're used to. And so in order to fix that, we have to improvise a little bit more. And that's where these kind of activities really do come into play. Because, we've talked about on various Fitness Fridays, we've talked about video games, we've talked about Tai Chi, doing things in chairs and things like that. You also don't necessarily want to do the same activity over and over again because it gets boring, frankly. And you want to work a lot of your other muscle groups. So maybe one day you do a walk on the beach or a walk in the woods or what have you, and then you do a round of Tai Chi on the next day, and then the next day maybe you're playing one of the activity video games like the virtual tennis or the Mario at the Olympics game, or something along those lines. Keep it variable because that's what's going to potentially keep you interested in it. Now, if you try a couple of different things and you find the one thing that you really like and that's all you want to do, there is something to be said about that, because if you do the things that you like to do, you're more likely to keep doing them. That's why we do things like harmonicas coming up on Monday. That's why we do a lot of these kind of activities instead of necessarily making it very clinical. We want to promote doing things that are fun. We want to promote doing things that you're going to keep doing, because the most important thing is that you're staying active. So that was our walk on the beach. I encourage everybody to check that out and check out the English countryside videos and so on and so forth. Let's take a look. We're still waiting on some questions. We've got a few viewers coming in here, but still waiting on some questions. So what's on your mind as far as COPD, as far as self-care, as far as a lot of the other topics that we cover either here on COPD Navigator or on our new show, Fight to Flight with Kelly and Mike, over on the Best Nest channel. In the meantime, let's take a look and see what else there is in terms of COPD news. Like I said, we're starting to get some. That reminds me. I want to say can't remember if we did this on what show we did this on, but I want to say a big thank you to Jamie Sullivan, who has recently left the COPD Foundation to go to bigger and better bigger opportunities, certainly, and better for her opportunities with another foundation. Really appreciate all the work that Jamie has done over the last, I believe she said 14 years. It is she's still going to hang around a little bit, keep a toe in the water of the COPD world. But we're going to miss her enthusiasm and her dedication. So congratulations, and we miss you, to Jamie. Let's see what else is going on here. Let's see. So this was an interesting. So we've got two that I want to cover real quick here. One was mentioned, let's see if I can get this. We'll just keep it going here. We'll talk about this. This is from COPD News Today. This was from a couple of weeks ago, and actually had one of my asthma contacts send me this a couple of weeks ago too. This study shows that why undersized airways may explain why some non-smokers develop COPD. We know that probably definitely one of the biggest risk factors for COPD is tobacco smoke. At least in the developed world, what we usually call the developed world, the industrialized world. In the developing world, we know that biomass fuel smoke, again, those campfires and things like that are a little bit more prevalent for cooking and heating in those settings. Those are one of the biggest risk factors in addition to tobacco. But we also know that 20 to 25% of people with COPD have never smoked. Jeannie, I see you got a question from you coming in. We'll get to that in just a second here. So this study showed us that having small airways compared to lung size may contribute to the development of COPD in many non-smokers. This was some data that was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. And let's see. So past research has shown that some adults with COPD had poor lung function early in life. Which led researchers to suspect that a mismatch of airway to lung size might influence COPD risk. And that does appear to be the case. This was done through CT scans of 6,500 people in the U.S. and Canada. What's up, buddy? Emma will be back in a moment. So yeah, this could be an explanation why. Now, even controlling for things like asthma and ethnic background and things like that, it definitely seemed to show that if you genetically have smaller airways, and it's not entirely clear why some people may have those, but they do, you may end up developing COPD later in life, even if you never smoke. And that is kind of the takeaway of the findings here. It says, taken together, our findings suggest that dysapnesis, which is the development of small airways, is a major COPD risk factor on par with cigarette smoking. It is believed to arise early in life, and understanding the biological basis of that may one day lead to early life interventions to promote healthy and resilient lung development. So, is it, childhood risk factors? Is it pollution factors? Is it stress? Adverse events, that sort of thing. Unclear yet, but we now have another avenue of research. So Jeannie asks, been having more edema in my right foot, been keeping sodium under 1,000 milligrams a day. Could inactivity be making this worse? Is it okay to exercise with edema? Inactivity could definitely be making it worse, particularly if you're sitting for long periods of time, because if you're sitting, you don't have a lot. When you're upright and you're what? Not right now. That's okay. Thank you. When you're walking and when you are upright and all these things, your body tends to circulate a little bit better, including the lymph that usually piles up as fluid in your lower extremities. When you don't have that activity, when you're just kind of sitting in a chair or what have you, you start to have what's called dependent edema, where all of that fluid succumbs to gravity and starts going down. Is it okay to exercise with that? Generally, yes. You do have to be careful about pain. You do have to be careful, again, make sure that you are discussing this with your clinician so that you can find the appropriate activities for you. We focus a lot on walking and things like that as exercise, but we also have a lot of other potential things. Like we once showed off. We did a demo of this gadget one time. This is a peddler that you would is sold and advertised as something you put on the floor to use, but it is adaptable on the right kind of table and the right kind of surface, which this most definitely is not, but it will. Here we go. You can put it on a table and use it for your arms. And again, if you're pedaling your arms, eventually, just like in a rowing machine, eventually you're going to start having aerobic benefit from that. So, again, if you're finding the edema is too painful in your feet to do a lot of running and walking and that sort of thing, do something that uses your hands. It's not necessarily going to help the edema because you're still in kind of that dependent position, but it's still going to keep you active. So finding the right activity that is safe and comfortable and enjoyable for you to do is going to be key. So short answer, yes, it's probably related. Yes, it's generally okay to exercise with activity. Long answer is you got to work on the details to keep you safe. Great question, though. Great question. So any more questions like that? We still have about 15 minutes to go here. Otherwise, we're going to look into this is something that I think would be a really nice thing. The headline to this article is Lung Patients Improvement Amid UK Lockdown Spurs Calls to Reduce Air Pollution. Again, I was kind of mentioning that and I wish it had gotten more stars in that because this is kind of a big deal. We have not historically had a lot of emphasis on air pollution as an issue in asthma, as an issue in COPD, as an issue in any of these lung conditions, either in the development of it or in exacerbations. However, we are kind of seeing that a little bit more these days. And we're tell you a little bit of a story here. back in the beautiful days of February, when we thought some of the biggest public health news was going to be that China was having a bad year, and that Australia had burned to the ground. I did a presentation to our residents about those Australian wildfires, and we were seeing that air pollution in one part of the world can really translate over a very long distance. We see that here in Michigan because we have on occasion, you've probably seen clean air days or ozone action days or what have you, where ozone levels are high. Ozone is an irritant, so if you have a lung problem, you go outside, you're going to have more irritation because it's going to be inflamed and irritated and all that stuff. So when it's hot and humid, those are perfect conditions for ozone to stick around at ground level, particularly in the summertime when people are cutting their grass and small engines give off a lot of ozone, all that kind of stuff. So we have these ozone action days from time to time. And in Michigan, we had basically two zones where they happened a lot. They happened more than the baseline. One of them was about a 6 to 8 county area by Detroit, which kind of makes sense. Detroit is still that Detroit area, not necessarily Detroit proper, but that part of the state is still our most densely populated, most cars, most traffic, most factories, most industry, lots of air pollution. But oddly enough, the other zones were two spots along Lake Michigan where they were smaller cities. I believe one was St. Joe, which is not, it's not a village, but it's not Detroit. And the other one was, I think, Holland or Muskegon, which again, industrial areas, but not to the level of a Detroit or something else. But what they found was by looking at air patterns, wind patterns, they were seeing that the ozone pollution from Chicago and Milwaukee was coming right across the lake. Oops, that's going to sound great. Was coming right across the lake and triggering these ozone sensors on the edge of Lake Michigan. And so even though we didn't necessarily have bad air pollution, we were still having these issues. And we see that, that's a local example, but we can see that all around the world. And where I'm going with Australia is we saw, it was right about the time of the Australian Open. So there were videos of tennis players, some of the most athletic people on the planet, collapsing and coughing, with coughing spells and wheezing spells. Some of them had to withdraw. Again, these are people who don't necessarily have underlying lung problems, but they were still wildly affected by this air pollution. And in addition, there was a fantastic graphic that was showing how the particulates were eventually making their way all the way to, by the point I had done the presentation, they had made it all the way to the west coast of South America, Chile and Argentina, I believe. It's been a while since my geography B days. I know Chile, but the east coast, the west coast of South America, which is a long way. And eventually, all that, and they were predicting that it was eventually going to make it all the way back to Australia, given enough time. So air pollution is kind of a big deal. And we're seeing that now, particularly because one of the upshots to the lockdown is that there has been less pollution. There has been less industry because there's been less demand and people weren't supposed to go to work. There has been less automobile travel. There's been less airline travel. There's been less mass transit. And so a lot of the pollution levels have started to decline. And so this study, according to the British Lung Foundation, 1 in 6 UK residents with lung conditions have reported improving symptoms. More than half report a noticeable decrease in air pollution since lockdowns began. Of course, we're starting to open up again, so we may see some of that lost. But this is an excellent example of, trying to find the silver lining here. Let's see, we've got some more specific numbers. We've got 19.7% of parents observe their children's symptoms have improved. And this is a really telling fact, a really telling statistic that when we have, they say correlation isn't causation, but I mean, sometimes they also say when there's smoke, there's fire. When we have less of a known irritant, it makes sense that we're going to have less of a result from that irritant. So we're going to have less lung irritation. So hopefully we can start seeing some improvement on fine particulate matter standards, and nitrogen dioxide. That said, there's been a 40% decrease in that across the UK. All of these known lung irritants dropped and people started feeling better. So if that doesn't spur you to at least consider trying to improve air pollution standards, I don't know what will. So we've got about 10 more minutes to go here. If anybody wants to get some last minute questions going, we've got a couple other news things here. Let's see if we've got any that seem interesting. Pulmonary rehab within 3 months is noted to improve survival. Well, duh. Let's see. We've got another clinical trial seeming to restart here. Let's see if we can scroll through that. It was. So this study is telling us that there is a kind of technology called lung denervation, where they actually can go in and, I got to subscribe for this for some reason. They can go in and actually, they use radio waves to destroy certain nerves thought to control airway constriction and mucus production. So they basically stop up plug up the hole, I guess, so to speak. And you won't be producing as much mucus. You won't be able to, you won't have as much bronchospasm and things like that. So Nuvera's lung denervation system, which is under clinical investigation, has been designated a breakthrough device. This designation is given to devices that have the potential to substantially improve the treatment of serious diseases, which I would wholeheartedly agree with. It's an interesting idea. We have looked at using heat and we've looked at using cryotherapy, cold. We've looked at both of those to kind of positively remodel the airways in COPD. But we haven't really looked at destroying the nerves themselves yet, or damaging the nerves. I'm optimistic about this. I think it's a very interesting thing, and of course it stops one of the major problems in COPD and potentially even untreatable area, what we call refractory asthma, which is asthma that doesn't really respond to normal treatment. I would be a little bit concerned though, simply because the normal defense mechanism of your lung is to go into bronchospasm and create mucus. When you have a pollutant, or when you have an irritant that comes into your lungs, that's how they protect themselves. So I would want to be very cautious about looking at some of the long-term results to make sure that we're not putting people at risk for infections. I think that this would have a great potential for, if it's allowing the irritant in to kind of set up shop and then, maybe get infected, just like, if you had a splinter or something, never took it out, you might get infected. I would have some concerns about that. But would the concerns outweigh the risk? Would the risks outweigh the benefit? That's just something I would want to see investigated before we really throw a lot of hope behind a device like this. So let's see. We'll do one last spin through any other sites coming through with COPD news as we're getting ready to wrap up here. Our first Fitness Friday in a while. I hope everybody enjoyed that walk. Let me know. Give me some feedback. Was that Saharan? Oh yes, Joe. Saharan dust. That's a good point. Kind of flying somewhat under the radar of everything else that has fallen apart over the last few months. There are major dust storms. I will actually admit to I haven't really been paying attention to that as much as I probably should either. But seeing it described as Godzilla and amazing by NASA astronauts aboard the space station, we should probably look into that a little bit more. But again, this also kind of ties into, this is kind of a natural air pollution, but it's air pollution nonetheless. and it has blown over from the Sahara to the U.S. Um, it does seem to have some positive benefits. This article from Vox.com is telling me that it is part of a system that feeds the ocean, fertilizes the rainforest, and suppresses hurricanes. So maybe we won't have to worry so much about hurricanes this year. But let's see. This cloud is far denser with dust particles than previous events. Recently shrouded cities like Houston, Miami, and New Orleans. Boy, looking at some of these satellite images, yeah, that's a thing. And triggering air quality alerts for millions of people. So that's where it is. And if it's getting all the way, let's see, it looks like it's kind of following a traditional kind of Atlantic hurricane track, where the most places at risk are like the article is just saying, Miami, Florida, Louisiana, Texas, the Gulf Coast, maybe a little bit into Georgia and the Carolinas and those coastal regions there. And then also likely, everybody in between those spots. But that's probably where Joe's checking in from in Georgia. That's probably what's he can give us a man on the scene report there probably. Massive dust clouds are normal, but scientists aren't sure why it's so bad this year. So, I mean, yeah, and this is unfortunately one of those things we're not going to be able to do a whole lot about other than wear a mask. Um, you know, there's been a lot of debate about the effect of, well, I shouldn't say there's been debate. There's been misunderstanding about the utility of masks with the pandemic. Pardon me. Got allergies still bothering me a little bit too. Um, when you wear a mask with in the sense of the pandemic, you are protecting others because it's less likely for that to escape out. However, dust particles are generally a little bit bigger than aerosol particles, and so you can wear a mask to prevent that stuff from getting in. Ideally, you're still going to, the objective non-lung problem thing there would still be looking at like an N95 mask or something like that. Not necessarily something I would recommend for someone with COPD, but this is where I might consider looking for more of the surgical mask than the cloth mask, which is often a good idea. I've been noticing both from people reporting to me and then my own experience wearing a cloth mask. I've noticed that exhaling can be a little bit more difficult. So I can only imagine that yeah, like Joe says, it makes for spectacular sunrise and sunset. Just wear a mask. Yeah. But again, I would probably want to consider something a little bit more like the surgical mask here, just because it's probably going to be a little bit finer knit, so to speak, than the cloth mask. Of course, it depends on, there are so many different kinds of cloth masks these days. But definitely be careful. And if you're outside, wear a mask for that. Yeah, because this is not one that we can kind of wave away with reduced road traffic or anything like that. So be careful out there. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start wrapping things up here because I'm not seeing a lot of other news just at the moment. Not seeing a lot of more questions coming in other than it's kind of the repeats of a lot of the issues we've talked about with the inhaler and the undersized airways and all that stuff. So really appreciate everybody coming in at the beginning of their holiday weekend today. It's nice to get back to being live. Nice to get back to doing some exercise and things like that. Looking forward in the near future to figure out how we can do this on a regular basis again. I do want to highlight every Monday at 7 p.m. we do have our COPD Navigator Ready Room where we have basically we're falling into a rotation where we do harmonicas and then we do a breathing support group and then we do a tobacco cessation group and then we have open mic night. So more of a social function. So that's probably going to be the cycle that we're going through for a little bit of time here. That seemed to work pretty well, and we're going to do that. To get to that, that is a Zoom web conference that gives us a little bit more interaction. So it's real easy to do. You can either use the Zoom app. There's a link posted every week on our COPD Navigator page, and you can also sign up at copdnavigator.net for email reminders, where it also comes with the link. We're starting to get an actual functional website these days at copdnavigator.net. Joe says he's going to go walk on that Hawaiian beach right now. Definitely check that out and check out some of the other walking tours that are out there. It's a great way to get a little bit different scenery. As far as the Zoom stuff goes, you don't even have to have a webcam or anything like that. If you don't want to show your face or anything like that, you can call in, you can sign in audio only. There's a lot of options there. It's just nice because we get a little bit more opportunity to actually talk to each other and ask and answer questions of the group. You know, a lot of good peer interactions going on there. So that's a great mechanism for that. What else we've got going on? On Tuesdays, we've got, like I said before, my wife and I are doing Fight to Flight, covering, honestly, a lot of the same topics we cover here. A little bit more broader view. We both, we're working on getting our weight back under control and our healthier lifestyles back under control, and also learning all the time about dealing with stress and dealing with stressors and all kinds of stuff like that. So I invite everybody to check that out. You can search The Best Nest on Facebook and find us pretty easily there. The Best Nest LLC is our official name because we're late to the party, and I guess The Best Nest is popular. But look for the blue bird on a pink background, and that's us. I think that's about it. Want everybody to stay safe out there this weekend. Have some fun celebrating. If necessary, celebrate from a distance. Zoom and other platforms are also really nice for gatherings when you want to be social from a distance. Make sure that you're seeing people and continuing to have that social interaction, but keeping yourself safe. Like I said at the top of the hour, everything is spiking again. We don't want to see people taking unnecessary risks right now. I know it's been a long year. I know we've had a lot of stress and strife. We got to hang in there so that we can continue to, open the things that are able to be opened and keep everybody as safe as we possibly can. So also, please be careful with not just fireworks. Fireworks is always kind of the stereotypical danger item right now, but again, it's going to be hot in many parts of the country. Watch out for air quality. Watch out for those ozone days. Watch out for grills, gas grills, charcoal grills. We love to be having our grill outs this time of year. I'm going to be grilling out today myself, but make sure that you're using caution around all those areas too. COVID is still in a lot of ERs, and a lot of places in the hotspots are stressed. And the last thing I would want to see is somebody getting COVID-19 because they went in with a burn or something like that and got exposed in a waiting room or something like that. So please, have fun, but be safe about it. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to take away everybody's fun. I don't want to be the Grinch that stole summer, but make sure you're taking care of yourself out there and make sure you're taking care of each other. So until next week, when hopefully I'll see you either in the Ready Room or on Fight to Flight, or maybe we'll get to go live at some point in the evening time. That might be kind of fun. We'll see what we can do with that. Until we meet again, my name is Mike Hess. This has been COPD Navigator House Call. Breathe lightly, everybody, and have a great weekend. Take care. Oops.